Tantor Audio, a division of recorded books, presents The Polymath, A Cultural History from Leonardo da Vinci to Susan Sontag, by Peter Burke, narrated by Nigel Patterson. Nothing is more beautiful than to know everything. Plato. Ah, but a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for? Robert Browning, Andrea del Sarto. Specialization is for insects. Robert Heinlein. Preface. For the last 20 years or so I have been working, on and off, on the history of knowledge, publishing a general survey, a social history of knowledge, 2 volumes, and an introduction to the subject, What is the History of Knowledge? And most recently, Exiles and Expatriates in the History of Knowledge. Like the book on exiles, the present study developed out of the general survey to become a book on its own. I have been drawn to this topic for a long time. Although my mathematical and scientific illiteracy makes polymathy out of the question, I have long shared the view famously expressed by the French historians Lucien Lefebvre and Fernand Braudel, that one writes better history by escaping from the confines of that discipline, at least from time to time. As a student at Oxford, taking a 3-year course in history, I went to lectures in other disciplines, to Gilbert Ryle on philosophy, for instance, to Roy Harrod on economics, to J.R.R. Tolkien on medieval literature, to Michael Argyle on psychology, and, most important for my future, to Edgar Wind on art history. As a postgraduate student, I began reading in sociology and anthropology, and attended seminars in the history of science, as well as one organized by Norman Birnbaum and Iris Murdoch on the concept of alienation. When I heard that the new University of Sussex was going to be organized in an interdisciplinary manner, I immediately applied for a position there, and taught in the School of European Studies from 1962 to 1979, collaborating in teaching with colleagues in art history, sociology, and English and French literature. Thanks to these experiences, at Sussex in particular, I felt that this was a book that I really had to write, about individuals and small groups concerned with the big picture as well as with detail, and often engaged in the transfer or translation of ideas and practices from one discipline to another. It has been a pleasure to keep company, however indirectly, with this gifted group of men and women, the polymaths discussed in this book, some of whom were old acquaintances, and in a few instances personal friends, while the achievements of others were discovered only in the course of the research. Introduction. What is a polymath? History, it has been said, is unkind to polymaths. Some are forgotten, while many are squashed into a category we can recognize. They are remembered, as we shall see again and again in what follows, for only one form or for a few forms of their varied achievements. It is time to redress the balance. In fact, an increasing number of studies of individual polymaths have been published in recent years, perhaps in reaction against our culture of specialization. I have made grateful use of many of these monographs, which include not only studies of intellectual giants such as Leonardo and Leibniz, but also some near-forgotten figures such as Dumont d'Urville and William Rees. General surveys are more difficult to find, although their number is increasing, especially in the form of short contributions to journals or radio programs. In attempting such a survey, this book offers an approach to the cultural and social history of knowledge. All forms of knowledge, practical as well as theoretical, deserve to have their histories written. Hunter-gatherers needed a wide range of knowledges to survive, while farmers were celebrated as many-sided by the geographer Friedrich Ratzel, who was a polymath himself. Artisans, midwives, merchants, rulers, musicians, footballers, and many other groups require and possess a segment of knowledge in which some individuals excel. In the last few years, the term polymath, once confined to scholars, has been extended to individuals whose achievements range from athletics to politics. Definitions. The Polymath discussion group, for instance, has defined the polymath as someone who is interested in and learning about many subjects. This book, on the other hand, will concentrate on academic knowledge, formerly known as learning. It focuses on scholars with interests that were encyclopaedic in the original sense of running around the whole intellectual course or curriculum, or at any rate round a major segment of that circle. For this reason I have excluded two entrepreneurs, Elon Musk, who took degrees in economics and physics before founding Tesla and other companies, and Sergey Brin, who studied mathematics and computer science before founding Google together with another computer scientist, Larry Page. I also hesitated before including that many-sided man John Maynard Keynes, since most of his sides were not academic. Keynes was described by his friend Leonard Woolf as a don, a civil servant, a speculator, a businessman, a journalist, a writer, a farmer, a picture dealer, a statesman, a theatrical manager, a book collector, and half a dozen other things. On the other hand, Keynes himself remarked that the master economist must possess a rare combination of gifts. He must reach a high standard in several different directions, and must combine talents not often found together. He must be mathematician, historian, statesman, philosopher, in some degree. On that criterion, not to mention his interest in the many interests of Isaac Newton, Keynes certainly qualifies. A few famous writers of fiction will be discussed in the chapters that follow, notably Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, George Eliot, Aldous Huxley, and Jorge Luis Borges. But this is essentially because they also produced non-fiction, usually essays. In similar fashion, Vladimir Nabokov is included, not as the author of Lolita, but as a literary critic, an entomologist, and a writer on chess, while August Strindberg appears as a cultural historian rather than as a dramatist. Conversely, Umberto Eco will appear as a scholar who also wrote novels. Disciplines. Defining a polymath as an individual who has mastered several disciplines raises the question, what is a discipline? The history of academic disciplines is a double one, both intellectual and institutional. The term disciplines in the plural comes from discipline in the singular, itself derived from the Latin word discere, to learn, while disciplina translated the ancient Greek word askesis, meaning training or exercises. In classical antiquity, the idea of discipline moved back and forth between at least four domains: athletics, religion, war, and philosophy. Discipline was learned by following the rule of a master, thus becoming his disciple, and internalizing it, practicing a kind of asceticism of self-control, both of the mind and the body. In the course of time, the term discipline came to refer to a particular branch of knowledge. In ancient Rome, the study of thunder and lightning was known as disciplina etrusca, because specialists in this practice were Etruscans. In the 5th century, Martianus Capella wrote about 7 disciplines, otherwise known as the 7 liberal arts: grammar, logic, rhetoric, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. The idea of disciplines in the plural implied organization, institutionalization, and indeed the beginning of a long process of specialization. In order to avoid projecting later attitudes onto the past, I include magic as a discipline when writing about the 16th and 17th centuries, and try to avoid referring to biology, anthropology, and so on when discussing the time before these names came into use. Making life more difficult for the historian, the criteria for calling a scholar a polymath have changed over the last 600 years. As traditional disciplines have fragmented, the idea of many disciplines has been diluted and the bar set lower. A recent article describes living individuals who have made original contributions to 2 disciplines, such as law and economics, as polymaths. However odd it may seem to call 2 many, it has become a significant achievement to keep 2 intellectual balls in the air at one time. Aims and methods. This study.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?